In this video, we're going to be looking at using the cosine rule to find a missing angle. We'd use the cosine rule to find a missing angle when the triangle is not right angled and when we are given the lengths of the three sides of the triangle. When we're labeling our triangle, we use capital letters for the vertices, and then once we've labelled a vertex, that's a corner of the triangle, then the side directly opposite that corner or vertex, we also label correspondingly with a lowercase letter to match. So there you can see in the diagram, we've got vertex A and directly opposite that, length A. Similarly, we've got vertex or corner B, and directly opposite that, we've got the side of length B. And finally, vertex C, directly opposite that, length of side C. Capital letters for vertices, lowercase letters for the sides. So, here's our example. We've got our triangle, we've got three lengths marked in, and we've got an angle X that we're trying to find. So directly opposite angle X is a corresponding side, which is 8 centimeters. Now, in our formula, we've got A squared starting the formula and cosine A ending the formula. Now, that's really important we understand that the side that starts the formula, it corresponds to the angle that ends the formula. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, we're trying to find the angle X, which is at vertex A, so that would be this cosine here. Therefore, our formula needs to start with the length directly opposite that vertex. So that length in this example is 8 centimeters. So our formula will start 8 squared equals. Now B squared plus C squared are just the squares of the other two lengths. So that would be 8.1 squared plus 7 squared. The next bit of the formula is subtract 2BC. So that's subtract 2BC. B and C are the other two lengths here. So BC would be 8.1 and 7. And then times by, on the end, cosine A, where in this case the angle is X degrees. So cosine A means the cosine at vertex A, which in this case is X degrees. So we start tapping in some numbers into our calculator. On the left hand side, 8 squared is 64. Now that 8.1 squared plus 7 squared, that equals 114.61. That's where that number's come from. And then in the bracket, 2 times 8.1 times 7, that equals 113.4. So now I'm going to subtract that 114.61. I've subtracted that from both sides. So we've ended up with a negative on the left-hand side. And when we've subtracted the 114.61, I'm left with negative 113.4 cosine X, which is what we've got here. I'm now going to divide both sides by that negative 113.4. Remember now we're trying to find X, which is an angle, so we press the shift cosine button. So we work out negative 50.61 divided by negative 113.4. And notice here, the two negatives cancel each other out, which is why I've not included them down here. And then shift cosine, and we should get 63.493, which we're going to round off to one decimal place, 63.5 degrees. Here's example 2. There's our angle X we're trying to find. The corresponding length or side that matches X is directly opposite. That's 11 centimeters. So that 11 centimeters is going to start our formula 11 squared. B squared plus C squared are the squares of the other two sides. So subtract 2 times b times c, and then times by cosine a, where a is x degrees. Okay. Now, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, the letter here is a C, okay, and yet I've got A here. Well, these letters are all interchangeable, okay? The key part being that the length that starts your formula must match the vertex, must correspond to the vertex that, or the angle that ends your formula. So, we're using the angle at C, which is x degrees. The corresponding length is 11 degrees, so that must start the formula because x is ending the formula. All right. 11 squared is 121. 6.5 squared plus 8 squared, that's 106.25. And 2 times 6.5 times 8, that's 104. I've now subtracted 106.25 from both sides, so I've got 14.75 left on the left-hand side, and I've got the negative here, that negative 104 cosine x. I'm going to divide both sides by that negative 104. I'm going to press Shift cosine, and my final answer is 98.15, which I'm going to round off to 98.2 degrees to 1 decimal place. So, a summary of the cosine rule. The cosine rule is used when we're given two sides and an angle between. We'd use that version when we're trying to find this third length here. Or if we're given three sides and we're trying to find an angle, which are the two examples we've just seen, we'd use the cosine rule again. That's a cosine rule. It can be interchanged with b squared equals a squared plus c squared, as long as the letter at the start of the formula corresponds to the letter at the end of the formula. That's the important part. And there's a diagram that shows you the corresponding corners to the corresponding sides. And as I said, the formula, the angle at the end matches the side at the start.